Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Act Three. As always, super glad that you tuned in. Today's episode, we're going to talk about Black Heritage Month. And I have a special guest with me, Coco. And I know I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to try to do it right. Coco Madaray. She is with the Nanaimo
Hey,
African. I see. Did I get it right?
yeah. Well, the name is Coco Madari,
Coco
and
Madari.
then
See, I knew I was going to get it wrong. I knew it as soon as I write it down. But there we go.
my
She's with the,
pronouns are they them.
and her pronouns are I'm
Their
sorry, their pronouns are
pronouns.
they, them. In the last few episodes of the program, we've been talking about transgender and gender, differences. I am really, truly, and I try my best. I know that a lot of our listeners are the same. It's not easy to use those pronouns yet. And by all account, I know I'm apologizing on behalf of my listeners and myself for getting it wrong. I will probably get it wrong again. Feel free to correct me at any time as well. It's super important we do that. And for our listeners that are listening, whenever we're in this situation where we're trying to move ahead, gender has become a very big and important part of the way we address each other. So I'm inviting you all as well to pay attention when someone is sharing with you that they identify in a certain way. So let's try that again. Coco Madare. I still got that
Madari,
part wrong. Madari.
Madari.
Coco Madare identifies as they, them. They, them are from the Nanaimo African Heritage Society. And we're going to break open Black Heritage Month. Welcome to the program, and thanks so much for your
Yeah,
patience, Coco. How are you
no
doing?
worries. And for everyone listening, it's Black History Month.
Black History Month.
Yes,
There you go. And I got it again.
yeah.
The one thing I know for sure is that I'm really comfortable in being in the uncomfortable place of not knowing. This is
Oh,
a
that's
great
good.
time, right? Black History Month. In From my background in Canadian culture, we haven't really seen or don't necessarily know much about Black History Month, particularly because on the West Coast, in actual fact, we don't really see as many people of color as we do in the East Coast. Could you kind of help us along that way and maybe just give us a little bit of information on what this is all about and how we can support community?
Yeah, totally. So Black History Month, at least from my understanding, is really just about honoring and calling attention to what happened, what's happening, the contributions that Black people have provided to the world that are often overlooked,
Absolutely.
the inventions and the ways that they transform the oppressive landscape into something beautiful. Like, for example, I just watched a documentary on jazz and how it originated from New Orleans, and it was created by poor Black people. And and then it ended up transforming into something that is so international and worldwide. And so just really seeing the Blacks' excellence in the world in spite of all of the effort, right? And we're also learning about that, all of the effort of silencing Black
Yeah.
people and all of the oppression. And I actually highly recommend, if you're interested in doing a little bit more of that research, this book, My Grandmother's Hands.
Ah,
So
yes.
yeah, it talks about why race was created in the first place. It actually wasn't something that existed in, like, before the 1600s.
True.
Like, there
Yeah,
wasn't Black
absolutely.
person, white person. It was,
Yeah.
oh, this person's from this country, this person's from this country. But it was actually a concept that was created in order to create separation, right?
Yeah.
What do you call it? Separate and conquer, or divide and conquer.
Divide and
Yeah,
conquer. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a divide and conquer strategy created by plantation owners, because the white and Black plantation workers would get together. I have so much hip hat hair all over me.
Don't worry, don't worry.
If you just see me picking my face, it's just cat hair. Oh yeah. Um, yeah, so they would get together and revolt, and so they created this concept of race in order to not only divide and conquer the plantation workers, but also there was a lot of white on white violence in
Yes.
medieval times, and heads on spikes, torture, and all that stuff. So whiteness was something that was created in order to bring white people together and get them to stop fighting each other, get them to stop being afraid of each other. So it's actually very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Very
half
interesting.
white,
And
half
because I
black.
don't think that community traditionally thinks about white on white fighting as much, because
Mhm.
we see so much intergenerational racial fighting, and not just with white on black, but white on all people of color, and
Yeah,
all people of color, including our own Canada, with the First Nations community and the
sure.
destruction of the village as we know it, colonization, all of these
Yeah,
pieces have played such a big impact.
yeah.
Um, so when, like, with I'm trying to formulate my question at the same time, and you know what is really interesting for me is that I'm finding myself uncomfortable in the conversation, and I'll
Mm,
tell you why. I just recently went through a decolonization conversation with First Nation community, and I was reminded how white people, in their efforts to think that they're socializing people and that they're giving people freedom, they're very, including myself, not trying to be. When we come across in conversation, I feel that sometimes in our desire to do the right thing, we just fall all over our tongues trying to understand. And we started with today's conversation with me doing exactly that. And I know that for our listeners and for those that follow us on YouTube and iHeartRadio and all of our platforms, what I know for sure is that this conversation isn't just a conversation that I'm struggling with or you're struggling with, but our communities and our society as a whole is trying to navigate all of this, and we don't necessarily know how to do that. So
mm,
from the program that you saw, or the book that you read, My Grandmother's Hands, and as you were starting to lead for that, you brought up some great points about how already it was a construct created.
yeah.
Um, and for Black History Month, or not month, but Black History, how have communities of Black people been able to rise out uh, of the push by white people and others to take away or challenge their identity or identity at all?
Yeah. Well, even just that example of jazz, like it was like that creativity was a way for them to say, like, I am a human, I am an individual. You know, I think Black people and people of color have been pushing against and women as well have been
Oh,
pushing
sure. Yeah,
against the like
absolutely.
oppression for hundreds of years. And
Yeah,
I think that there is just like an inherent resiliency in humans to be able to, have that trauma happen to them and then still be able to create something from it and still be able to push forward. Obviously, not everyone's like that. Like
yeah.
I consider myself like a trailblazer and someone who will always have that like path and very very ambitious and motivated. Not everyone's like that. There have been a lot of people who haven't risen above anything and have
Absolutely.
it has
Sure.
completely destroyed them. Addiction,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
abuse and family abuse and all that stuff. So it's really just been we want to definitely honor all of the ways that it's been and just see the magnificence of how people have been so resilient, but also acknowledge like no, also people have been struggling. I am starting to get out of that constant struggle. Like even when I created like a really successful business, I still was feeling that struggle internally. And that's like a day to day, effort.
I understand exactly what you're saying, not because I understand what it's like to be a Black woman, or a Black person,
Yeah, yeah.
um for I don't have that experience. I can't speak to that, but I do understand marginalization, and I do understand that people as a whole, if the root of their ancestry has been belittled and pushed down and desensitized and destroyed, we see it every day where flowers are coming out of the mud in trying to say, look, all right, we've done some work, but there's so much more work to be
Yeah,
done. And I
yeah.
think that younger people are in a position now to really influence the trajectory of the conversation. And I'm going to start with, for our listeners who are watching or listening by CHLY 101.7 FM, thank you for listening. If you're watching us, however, on YouTube, you'll know that they have a band of yellow, a beautiful band of yellow underneath the eyes, markings. And so I just wanted to share with people that are visualizing this conversation, can you explain a little bit about what that band represents and what celebration it creates to honor your culture?
Yeah, totally. So I really love to play with tribal markings in my makeup. And what it does for me is it creates this kind of connection to my ancestors. I don't know what my ancestors' tribal markings were because that history has been erased. So I get to, that I get to grieve that, but I also get to create what I want to create from it.
Yeah,
And it also is a little bit of an act of activism as well, because, you know, I talk about the idea of professionalism. I use
sure.
quotation marks. And I asked myself, like, who was in the room when they decided what was professional and what wasn't?
Right.
Like, were they elders and chiefs? Were they, trans people? Were they people of color? No, they were white dudes in suits. And
Yeah,
so if I were
absolutely.
to show up at an office with this, right, I'm sure now would be a bit different. But like 5 years ago, it would have been like, take that off. That's unprofessional. That's whatever. So I like to challenge that. I like to challenge what is viewed as acceptable to how to express yourself and your heritage and culture and your personality and all that stuff, and celebrating Black History Month and promoting the gala that we have on the 25th. I really want to make an impression and show who I am, represent the Nanaimo African Heritage Society in the way that this is also kind of like an African color, like the red and the yellow and that brightness is very African. So I wanted to represent that.
Well, I'm grateful that you are coming to this program as yourself. Everybody else is taken. And so I far prefer being with people that are their authentic selves. But being our authentic self isn't always easy. And so I know, and again, in my work, I've come across situations in which people are afraid to use their voice, they're afraid to use their body or their frame is a symbol, a symbolic for fear of restitution or for fear that instead of getting their message more forward, there's other things that happen. Part of these having galas and conversations is about being in the uncomfortable. And so, can you talk a little bit about what that for you, that experience? You're very new to Nanaimo. You're celebrating something so fantastic. It's been part of Nanaimo for I don't know how many years. Shalima has been
24
putting
years.
24 years. She's been putting this on. So it's a known activity that we have here. It's a well celebrated one, but you're bringing a new twist to this by coming in with yourself. It's a fantastic thing. Let's talk about your journey to African Heritage Society, Nanaimo African Heritage Society, and what's coming up with the gala.
Yeah. So what's interesting, what brought me to the society is I moved to Nanaimo in September. So really not that long ago. It
Welcome.
hasn't even, thank you.
You're
Yeah, it
welcome.
hasn't even been a year yet.
Yeah.
But moving here, I actually didn't even know Nanaimo existed until like July.
Where did you
But
come from? Were you
Vancouver.
living on the mainland or yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But something happened. I started and I was feeling really called to start fresh and to start new. And so I was looking on the island where I could move, and I knew I didn't want to live in Victoria, but I didn't know where else. I wasn't like, I hadn't been really anywhere else. So I was just looking on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and then I saw a place that had a full view of the ocean. And I was like, that, I want that. I want like that freshness, that
Yes.
cleanliness,
Air.
the
Yeah.
air, the water. And so I ended up moving to the North End.
Mhm.
And then eventually moving downtown because I like being a little bit more with the people. I think I needed a break from people for a bit, and then like,
Yeah, we all
yeah,
have that. I mean, that's part of growing. It's part of living is you've got to have a breath every now and then for sure.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And over the past 3 years, I've been running a life coaching business. So it's been like a anti-racist, anti-oppressive, pro-abundance coaching business, where I help people deconstruct that conditioning and all that stuff, and create awesome businesses and do what they want in their lives. And so I've been doing that. But what had been happening is I also felt really pulled to create art and music and all that stuff. And I had created success in my coaching business, and I thought that my coaching business would be able to financially support it, but it was
Mhm.
too much because I needed the time to, you know, explore my artistic identity, find out what I like, find out what kind of music I want to create. And it was just too much having, bills to pay and all that stuff. So I was looking for work, and yeah, I saw the ad for the society. I've been applying for like development manager positions, fundraising positions, and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and event
Mhm.
planning. So I really wanted to get involved in the community and to show my face and to have people know me. And doing this gala is like the perfect way to like do something that I really care about. Like I've done BLM rallies before, I've spoken at things, and um, while also kind of meeting people, making friends, and getting involved in the community.
Has the community surprised you?
How has the music? How has it
Ha-
surprised me?
has the community
Has it?
surprised you at all?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got here, I immediately liked it. I immediately liked the people. I felt like they were warmer, way warmer than in Vancouver. And I was
Yeah.
like, my whole life, I thought there was something wrong with me because, like, people in Vancouver are so cold and, like, so snotty. There's some good people for sure, but, like,
Of course, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely a different
It's definitely
environment.
different. Yeah. I was like, whoa. And I moved here and I was like, oh my gosh, there are nice people out here. And not just
Yeah,
nice. There's a difference between like being nice and being kind.
that's true.
But
Yeah.
there are kind people here and warm people here. And I was like, oh, this is like the perfect place to like put down roots and to like build my art, build my community involvement, and build like my music. So yeah.
Well, you've come to the perfect place because I can tell you that, above and beyond any other community I've got to share my life with and in, Nanaimo was probably the most welcoming for me. And that was 13 odd years ago, and actually a little bit even before then. But at the end of the day, you'll find your groove here. It's a very wonderful place to live and to be. And you're right, people are genuinely kind. In part of your conversation, though, you did talk about BLM or Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because certainly over COVID in the last few years, with everything that's happened, particularly in the United States, how have you seen Canadians as a whole, both in Vancouver and here or wherever you've done the rallies? What have you seen for support from people within Vancouver or our area?
Yeah, I mean, I think BLM created a platform for me to talk about the things that had happened to me and have people actually care.
Yes.
Because before that, it was way less likely that I would find someone who had the capacity, who, actually cared, wanted to know my story, and it just wasn't in the environment.
Yeah.
So, I think BLM, like, although it was like a huge tragedy, and there's still so much happening for sure, and there's so much there is change happening, but there's people fighting that change and all that. But it really created a platform for us to be able to talk about the things that have been underneath the surface for so long and hurting people of color and hurting Black people, and all of this pain that at least I have been holding in, and all these experiences that I never talked about. Like, for
Yeah.
example, when I was in high school, one of my best friends, I put in quotation marks, she used to call me the N-word.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, she used to say it in my ear and whisper it to me. And I never told anyone about it. Not even my parents, not even my sister, not anyone. And it was just living inside of me, and this anger, and there's so many nights where I would not sleep and just be in this angry space, and I wouldn't even know really why consciously, but subconsciously there was that memory that was like eating me. And yeah, like just those kinds of experiences where I could be like, oh, that actually happened to me, and to like give myself that space to heal from it. And I'm still healing from it, still learning from lots of experiences that I've had. And yeah, so it's been I'm very grateful for what how the world's been changing. I think Nanaimo is a friendly city for sure, but it helps that the wind is more at my back,
Yeah,
as a Black trans person now than
absolutely.
ever before. Like, even, and then not only in how people respond to me, but how I engage with myself. Like, I remember growing up and I would always try to impress white people, or like, try to get into the like pretty white girls club, and I like wasn't invited, and
Yeah, totally. I understand. Yeah, yeah, I hear
improve
you.
myself, but it was all subconscious. I didn't even know it was happening. So um
And it's
yeah.
also genetic, in the sense that when I say genetic, I mean it's systemic is really the word I was looking for rather
Yeah.
than genetic, but it's familial after familial after familiar, years and years and years and years of oppression that becomes muscle memory. So that even when it happens and you're starting to go, no, we don't talk this way, we don't receive this in this way, there's still this piece of us. And the only reason that I'm saying that is because I witnessed the same thing in systemic poverty, right? Is that people that even when they, fight their way through whatever the stories have been throughout their lives and their families' lives, their generations of lives, and then they come out of that and they're actually doing very well for themselves. And then they find all of a sudden that they feel unworthy. And it has nothing to do with them because they've been, obviously doing very well in society. But there comes this place that it's a deep rooted
Yeah.
thing in
Yeah.
people. And it's really hard for people. People want to be compassionate, but they don't always understand.
Or even
Right.
have the capacity to be able to hold those emotions, because they're maybe not doing that work on themselves to like feel through something and like cry and punch pillows, and like most people don't do that. And so if you're showing up and you're crying, people are like, oh, I don't know what to do, because they're not doing it with themselves.
Right, and some of them wouldn't even consider it. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
they're not born self-aware enough to ask the question or know where to begin when they're looking inward.
That's a good point. Yeah, and that people have different levels of empathy as well.
True.
Some people are just more empathetic and compassionate than others.
Are you seeing some very clear boundaries being crossed still today, or has racism started to dissipate in some form or another? Is it starting to get the recognition of being where it's less existent, or do you think it's really the same and we're just still whitewashing it? I'm sorry for using that term, but it's true. Are we still whitewashing it? Are we still blind to what's happening with racism?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Like, it's it's an individual healing process.
Yeah.
Like, we all have um things that have happened to us. We also have things that like our ancestors have done. There's also ways that we have benefited from the ways that the world has been structured. Like, for example, I was just doing yoga this morning, and I was doing a boat pose with my legs up. And I was like born naturally skinny. I like came out long and like tall.
Lucky
And
girl, stayed that way the whole
yeah.
time. Good girl.
Well, yeah, yeah. Not girl, but
I'm sorry.
yeah,
See,
all
that's
good.
good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. My apologies. Thank you
Mhm.
then.
I was looking at my legs and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have fantastic legs. And I was just like admiring my legs. And then I was like, I felt guilty for
Yeah.
like admiring and loving my legs because so many people who aren't skinny don't feel like they can love their legs. And so I have some things that like I because I also have been bullied by people who are bigger than me because they were jealous of me having this way my body is built. And I
Yeah.
used to eat lots of junk food in front of people so that people wouldn't think that like I was trying to be skinny. So yeah, like there's a lot of there is maybe some guilt that needs to be looked at and processed and felt, and maybe there is some shame, maybe there is some whatever. And I think that if we are willing to look at and be there for our own difficult feelings and be true with ourselves about what we really want, then that is the way that we move forward. We don't move forward by saying, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's not,
Yeah.
it's just like saying fat phobia doesn't exist anymore. Like that's
No,
not,
you're absolutely right. And it's, I couldn't agree with you more. And I
yeah,
also value and appreciate that, what some, like what one segment of the population may feel that there have been some roads to recovery of racism. We're still seeing so many inconsistencies that people are still having a very hard time with acceptance. They're having a very hard time. I mean, I'm delighted that the trans movement, the LGBTQ2 spirit movement, and life has been opened up, but it's taken many, many, many years of people fighting for the right just to be themselves.
yeah,
And I know with Black Lives, it's very much the same. It's been generations and generations of people going back as far as slavery and even before, of people trying to find their identity, and just
yeah,
sweeping it under the rug does not
yeah.
make for a good conversation.
There's also a book to put on your guys' reading list called the Patriarchy Stress Disorder.
Yes.
So that one's for people socialized as women. And so it talks about how um, I don't know what the percentages were of like the amount of CEOs that were women, but it's actually decreased. And it's not because the world is saying women can't be CEOs, but it's because of this internalized patriarchy that women feel that they have to be more like a man in order to succeed. They can't, be their like, if a woman is like more flowery or excited or whatever, that's not professional. And
Yeah. No, you're
they
absolutely right.
and also there's like this statistic around women who make more than their husband actually do more housework.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
It's crazy, and I can see it.
And it makes sense, right?
With great respect, I am considerably older than you are.
Yeah.
And I mean that with I'm a very youthful person for my age, but nonetheless, I've watched, the 60s movement, the 70s movement, the 80s movement, the 90s movement, the 20s movement, and now, of course, we're moving into, right?
Yeah.
And through every piece of evolution where we start to see strides, I come from a time when you came a long way, baby, with a Virginia Slim cigarette hanging out and bell-bottom slacks, right? And things were like women were really just trying to get a voice. We had the vote, but it didn't mean we could make any decisions. We had deep discussions with community, and at the same time make a lot of decisions within community, but in actual fact, we're not really heard because of that patriarchal system. So
and that whole way, they're like, oh, well, what else do you want? You can vote
and what
now.
else do you want? Exactly, right? So that's right. So we don't use the N word anymore. What more do you want? So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't pull
yeah.
you on ships and bury you under the, with rows on, I mean, please, let's, I think that there comes a place for when, yes, we need to look at history for what it really is and for what it really was, and not to sugarcoat those periods. That's why colonialism has landed for so long and
Yeah,
done so well, is because, going back to our roots, that's not how societies were created, and it's certainly not how societies lived. People with greed and desire thought they knew better than everybody else, right?
yeah,
And as a direct result of them thinking they knew it better than everybody else, they destroyed some civilizations almost completely in the process.
yeah.
And so, and by the way, I'm not an expert on any of that, don't get me wrong. I'm standing a little bit on my soapbox there, but I'm delighted on the one hand to see that we're starting to see some major changes in evolution for everybody, that we're starting to see everybody as individuals, or they, them, or how they identify. It's I you know th- This is the first time in my history, in this last couple of years, I want to say, where I am witnessing some real changes, where people are, where they're comfortable to tell people how things really are. And that's not a way that so many people that are of a certain generation were brought up. And so it's really hard, right?
Yeah.
It's that constant push uphill, which we're trying to avoid, right?
Yeah, and I think people forget that when we take these strides and create that equality and that balance, what we can do with humanity is move forward and do really awesome things.
And we do
Like go up
always.
into space and, heal the planet. We can do
Yeah.
so many cool things when we just figure out how to like have empathy for each other.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to take an empathetic, compassionate break here just for a couple of seconds, because I do know that people are going to want to participate in the gala. I do know that people are going to want to know so much more about you and the Nanaimo African Heritage Society, and they're going to want to get their tickets as well for the end of this month. So listen, I'm going to get everybody right now to go grab this call to action. Go grab yourself a piece of paper, go grab yourself a pen. Make sure you grab the information, because you're going to want to celebrate along with the rest. I mean, this is a very good thing. Having said that, I also want to bring up a couple things that are going on in our community right now. So, ladies and gents, if you do follow Act 3 on Shaw Spotlight, Series 2, Episode 2 is coming out pretty darn quick. We're going into studio again, as a matter of fact, at the time of this taping, within the next few hours. And so we're really looking forward to sharing some information with you and our community about some other upcoming events, including the longest night of the year, including the Nanaimo African Heritage Society's gala, including a whole bunch more stuff. So make sure you tune into Shaw Spotlight. Also, hey, listen, don't forget, if you are a YouTube subscriber, thank you. If you're not, push the button, please. We sure appreciate it. And don't forget that you can listen to these podcasts as well on iHeartRadio and on Spotify. So right now, however, you are listening to CHLY 101.7 right here in beautiful Nanaimo. We love it when you tune in, and we're very grateful to have you here. My guest, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. I know I am. It's Coco. I'm going to go Coco, and oh, please help me, Matarai. I keep wanting to say that, and I know it's wrong. So, and everybody who listens to the show knows I screw up on people's name. It is not in any way meant to be disrespectful. It's actually a code of love. When I screw it up, you're part of the family. So, welcome. Please identify, Coco.
Yeah, it's Coco Madari.
Thank you, Madari. Madari. I should get that. That's an easy one.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
like I think like a medallion.
Well, and that's I keep kind of going in with the medallion, and I like the Madeira Park, and like I'm trying to like rationalize it in my brain to make it, and then of
Mhm.
course I open it just doesn't work. It is the way it is. So my apologies, my humble apologies. More importantly, you're here, you're on the program, and we're talking about Black History Month. and we're talking about the gala. Let's go right into the gala. People are going to grab their piece of paper and their pen and all that stuff while they're listening. They're pulling over to the side of the car. Like, tell us a little bit more about the gala. What is happening?
Yeah. So first of all, it's on February 25th,
Okay.
which is Saturday. Doors open at 6 p.m. Show starts at 7. Tickets are $40, which is an insane deal because dinner is included.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's going to be a fashion show. And there's going to be live performances and a DJ. I'm going to be doing some poetry.
Nice.
And it's going to be just a fantastic, incredible, beautiful event. It's going to be a tribute to Black and Indigenous excellence. So there's also going to be some information about some like cool Black and Indigenous brown people who have made huge strides in the world. And so it's going to be very educational, but also super fun.
I love the fun part, and I love the
Yeah.
food part, and I love the dancing part, and I love the entertainment part, and I love that it's so cheap. It's only $40. Oh my God.
It's
Like,
ridiculous.
I know. I know. It's ridiculous. It's so affordable, and you get some education in the process. It's really always wonderful to hear about some of the success stories of people that are living in our community and people that are excellent musicians, excellent artists. And I love the poetry piece. So tell us more about your poetry and tell us a little bit more about the entertainment that someone might enjoy if they come to the event.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The poem that I wrote was like the night before Shalina asked me if I would do some poetry. I'm like, oh my God, I just wrote a poem last night. Like,
Yeah.
that's so crazy. I just love how the universe just like
Yeah, the
sets things
universe is
up.
very, very cool.
Yeah. So as you'll get to know me, you'll know that I'm a very I like realness. I like
Yes.
realness and I like truth and I
Yeah.
like to be honest about my experience, but also about my power and about all of the gifts that I bring to the world. And I want other people to embrace the gifts that they bring to the world. And I think with
Absolutely.
trauma from all different sources, we forget that. You know, for example, my mother was a witch, and probably there's like ancestral like lineage there of just like magical women that has been totally suppressed, like the burning of witches and stuff like that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like that's just like one example of just like embodying the gifts that we've been kind of given. And I know that you know, indigenous people probably have similar things, or they have like spiritual gifts and stuff like that. So my poetry is going to speak to that a little bit, but also speak to you know what I've been through. And the poem
Yeah.
is a very healing, but it's very like real, and there might be some tears, and I like that. I'm a Gemini sun and a Cancer moon, Cancer rising. So the Cancer is like all tears. So I'm like, yeah.
So I totally get that. I resonate with that completely. I have a lot of cancers and cancer rising in my life. And there's something beautiful and authentic about the generosity that they give with their emotion. It's a gift.
Mm,
But I also just want to say that every person, just the fact that you're breathing, just the fact that you're alive, you are a gift. You are a gift to the
yeah.
universe. You are a present to a family member. You are a gift to a child. You are an inspiration. You know, all of those things that make us individuals are because we are a gift to the world. And so just by breathing, no matter what, where you are in life, no matter what's happening in your world. So I really resonate with that conversation. I think as well, what I'm interested in too is hearing about like, will there be any local Black artists as well showcasing any of their work besides yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we have an indigenous fashion designer who's going to be showcasing their designs. We're
Yes.
looking for more. Yeah, if there's any like Black or indigenous people on the island who
Yeah.
you guys think will be amazing, definitely reach out to the Nanaimo African Heritage Society. And if they want to perform or showcase something, be a vendor, we want to hear about it. And if not this time, then we have other events for sure. We want to And we also have our magazine, which
I was
is,
just about to say, you have
yeah,
one of
so
the
we're
prettiest
always,
books I've ever seen.
mhm,
It's a great magazine. Very, very
yeah.
cool. Can you talk a little bit about the magazine, please?
Yeah, for sure. We're going to talk a little bit more about it tomorrow because we have lots of ideas of where we want to take it. But yeah, it's just showcasing a lot of Black and Indigenous artists. There's definitely like people of all cultures who are like advertising their businesses on this magazine. Um, but moving forward, we have a lot of ideas. I don't want to share too much because we
No, I
haven't like
understand. We got
confirmed
there's
anything.
lots of room for growth and always
But
to bring you back as a guest on another program. So no
yeah,
worries there.
yeah, totally. But we're always looking to showcase more Black, Indigenous, BIPOC, LGBTQ, like all sorts of people.
So I'm going to stop you there just because I don't know what BIPOC is.
Oh, Black and Indigenous people of color.
Black and Indigenous people of color,
Yeah, so
BIPOC.
it's like Black and then Indigenous and then people of color, which includes like Asian and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Is there I know that there's a very large First Nations community, Indigenous population here. I have had the great luxury and the blessing of working with many people from Sunamo and Stunamus and some of our other local, being Vancouver Island wide, First Nations communities. Is there I love how the way you worded it with BIPOC. Is there a lot of similar, I don't I don't want to simplify it, but a lot of similar um, similarities between the two cultures, between the oppression and everything that's happened through your both of your histories. Is there? Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry. That's a really, and for our listeners who are listening, it's hard. This is one of the reasons I love the show is I'm asking the questions that people don't know how to ask, and I know I don't know how to ask them either. So because I don't how I'm not comfortable with asking the question, and I'm transparent about it, I know that it's being received in the right way because no one knows how to answer ask out so many of these kinds of questions, particularly white people that are in a certain age. We don't know what to ask, and so I'm not in any way trying to make mistakes. I just don't know how to ask the question, so I'm open about that. Based on how you received the question, though, I'm looking for the similarities between the cultures. Are there a lot of the same uh fights or lack of supports or between the cultures?
yeah. Yeah, I'll just speak from my own perspectives. I don't know like the official thing. I'll just speak
Fair
from
enough.
but Black people are indigenous to the world. Like they were the first peoples of the world. Although
Yes.
some people would like debate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that debate that. I know, I've heard
Yeah,
them and I keep going, are you kidding me? Like, we
I
have genetics to
know.
prove it.
Oh my
Yes,
God. It's
I
it's
know.
very,
I
very
know.
um yeah, and at least for me, I feel a very, very deep connection to my indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings. And also, because my um heritage and tribal history has been erased, like I did the ancestry test and I found out that our family was from Trinidad. Like we knew that, but then where from Africa we didn't know, and so it was like we just got a general area of like West Africa,
Yeah.
Congo, wherever, and but we don't know the exact things, so we don't know the exact customs, and so I feel really blessed and also like looking for that kind of tribal homey connection that has been lost because of colonialism. So I feel really connected to drums. I feel really connected to Indigenous people, and I always want to connect to them and see what kind of wisdom we can share and how we can collaborate, how we can be spiritual partners and um all that stuff. So I hope that answers your question.
It answers it beautifully. And I do resonate with so much of what you've said. I know that for Canadian side of the First Nations culture, we know that there are histories of peoples, of Indigenous communities that have been eradicated, erased, disposed of. We know that it's a very deep conversation, and we're not doing enough, in my opinion, in Canada as a whole to yet, come to terms with what we did. And I'm not talking necessarily about even my generation or the generation before me. I'm talking about the systemic challenge that was created long before, but we've never really, we're not doing enough yet on our part to make restitutions for that. And none of us know really what that looks like, because we're too busy trying to come up with a solution instead of asking the questions. So until we're brave enough, I think, to be able to say, how may we serve? How may we learn? We're going to keep making the same mistakes we make time and time again, right? So, and part of the reason why festivities like the one that's happening on February 25th, doors open at 6 o'clock, show at 7 o'clock, in celebration of Black History Month, and the gala is partially to celebrate the achievements and the joys and the reason for us to keep moving the dial forward and being together in celebration to celebrate with our fellow family members of community.
Yeah, and I think also the address, the place where the event
I was
is.
just about to say, we've talked about it, but where is it going to be?
Yeah, it's at 500 Bowen Road. So it's at Bowen Park at the community center there.
At the community center. Perfect.
And yeah, one thing I want to speak on
Yes,
in
please.
that, I love that question, how do we serve? That is so beautiful. And I think that is the role of helping. It is also, and this is something that I'm always working on within myself, up to Black and Indigenous people to really own their leadership.
Yes.
And to I do a lot of internal work on, ancestral trauma, where it's like, if you step up into a leadership role, you're going to be, pushed down, you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to be questioned, people are going to be talking about you behind your back, they're going to be, whatever. And I am doing the work of being like, when I show up, I am loved. When I show up, I'm supported. When I show up, I am, whatever. And that's work that I have to do on myself so that I can show up in a leadership role. And that's no one's job but my own. To do that. It doesn't matter how many people want to help me, I won't see them, because I'll be looking at the people who are like, have their nose up and who aren't listening to me. I'll be like trying to talk to them and I'll be trying to like convince them, right? But then there is the people who are actually here to help. And then there's a vulnerability and like a scariness and a walking into the unknown that I think we all have to be willing to walk into.
I absolutely. Yeah. And I think courage and vulnerability are hand in hand. It takes a lot of courage for people to be vulnerable. And it takes a lot of courage to hold space and not try to solve the problem, but listen, right? I mean, we're all in a hurry to have an answer, but we are not always allowing the space. Myself included. I've done it in the radio show probably 5 times at minimum, and maybe 6 or 7. So and I'm good with that, understanding that this is something that we have to work on moment by moment. I also think that it's important that as we're going through all of this, and the hard part is that, and this is going to sound trite, and it's not meant to at all, but I know it's going to until we get that define in order. But I can't read somebody else's mind. I can project that there's going to be a situation where I'm going to get, knocked down or beat up or emotionally, spiritually, verbally, however, I can have that going on in the inside of my brain. But I can't help but also stress that, each person that shows up on this planet has got a story that they tell themselves.
Yeah. And we have to like be self-aware of those stories, right? And to know that they are a story and not truth. And that's what that book, that Patriarchy Stress Disorder, really helps with, is
Yeah.
that we do have that story of like when I show up, when I'm at my when I'm a big sexy person, people
Yeah.
are gonna say this, do this, whatever. And that might have happened to our ancestors. We have to honor that.
Yeah.
We have to honor what happened. But there are ways that we can actually make our bodies feel safe to create a new story and to walk a different path. And that, yeah. So highly recommend you guys read that book if you're
Yeah.
interested in that kind of.
I, I'm about to
Yeah.
go get it right now.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, because there's something, I'm a believer that I know nothing, and I'm not, this is me, I'm not trying to pretend to be humble or anything like that, because I'm none of those things, right? I know that what I don't know, and there's so much more that I don't know than I do know. And I think it's really incumbent on all of us to sort of really visit, how are we showing up in this place? What do we want our experience to be? How can we best be a recipient of good and not evil? And how can we change the world a breath at a time? We may not be able to change the whole collaborative. We may not be able to change the societal influences. We may not be able to change all of those things, but we can change the way that we show up in the world, and person by person by person by person create systemic change. It's
Yeah.
not something that can be done otherwise. I don't think, I'm probably wrong, but that's my thought on that.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the show already. I know it's hard to imagine that we're here already. So we've just got a few minutes left. We've had a very in-depth, I think, conversation about some more difficult conversations. And I hope that this is a platform for people to springboard off of this to ask a lot more questions. I hope that people will be uncomfortable in asking the questions so that they can listen to the answers. And so I'm in great gratitude for your time and for you showing up in your authentic self. I appreciate that you handled my stumbling, knowing it's coming from a pure place. And if we can all work together and coming in purity, then we're all going to be able to shift the dialogue in a way that is meaningful for everyone. In that, the best way to shift the dialogue is to also get educated. So not only do we suggest you read a couple of the books that we've talked about, I will put them in the chat box for the listeners on the YouTube station, but more importantly, show up, go to the event. Let's tell people how to get tickets and where to go, and then we'll come back for the kernel of wisdom.
Yeah. So I have a feeling this event's gonna sell out. So
Yeah,
I would highly recommend
go
getting your
get your
ticket.
tickets.
Yeah, go get your tickets. You can get them online at Eventbrite. If you just look up Black History Month in
Mhm.
Nanaimo, it's the only event.
There you
So
go.
you should be able to find it. Or even if you look up Nanaimo African Heritage Society, or if you want to email me at nahsgala@gmail.com, and you're like, I don't know, just send me the link, I'll just send you the link. And we can leave the link in the show notes as well, or whatever, wherever we put the thing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We'll definitely make sure that there's some links in the show notes. It's really important for people to show up, right? There's a lot to be shared. I can't wait to hear your poem. So the only way to hear it is you got to go to the event. So if I can make it in my calendar, I'll be sure to be there. And if I can't make it in my event, I will have tried my best to get there. So please forgive me in that way. In this moment, though, one more time, I'm going to ask for the wisdom. If you could imbibe on our community, the takeaway, the part that you would want people to know, not only about the event itself, but just in this overall experience for you, what might that look like?
Yeah. Well, I wrote down something you said because it was like perfect. It was change the world one breath at a time. And the reason why I wrote that down is because in these books, it talks a lot about different ways to feel that safety, that just baseline safety in your body. so that those voices that are telling you you're not safe and it's not safe to show up, it's not safe to wear that, it's not safe to sit, go out there and sing, it's not safe, whatever, can actually take a break. Right. So it actually really is like a change the world one breath at a time. That's how you show up in a more authentic way. That's how you're more creative. That's how you come up with these really cool ideas. That's how you call in better opportunities. And it's how you show up as a better ally because you have a more, you're taking care of yourself. You have more ability to care for others. So it really is true. Change the world one breath at a time. And I imagine like the earth breathing together, like this like
Yeah.
cool pulsating thing.
Well, I think what the world needs now is love, more love. If we
Yeah.
can walk ahead in that, then we can do no wrong, right? So it's been a pleasure meeting you, Coco. I really look forward to meeting with you again and to seeing you in person. I can't get enough. I'm really excited and welcome to Nanaimo. Thanks so much for being here on Act 3.
Thank you.
That does it for this episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. You guys know what to do. Go to Eventbrite, look up Black History Month, type in Nanaimo and Shawang. You're going to come up with the event that's happening on February the 25th. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Get your tickets right now. They're only $40. You're going to have a wonderful time. We know you will. And in the meantime, don't forget to tune in on to our show on Shaw Spotlight for this episode. Thanks so much, everybody.
And also,
It's been oh yeah, go ahead.
Also, if you're interested in volunteering, we're looking for volunteers. If you want to contribute something, then you can also send me an email.
You heard it. We got another call to action. Get the volunteer bones out there. We need some help. Come on. We know you want to. Thanks so much, everybody. Have yourself a terrific day. And thanks for tuning in to Act 3 on CHOY 101.7 FM.